More than 40% of the world's population lives in countries that spend more on debt than on health and education. The United Nations warning of an erosion in development if governments cannot plan beyond just the next payment on interest. What happens when you owe so much? Growth alone cannot be the solution. Our second part special on why we really should be caring more about spiraling fiscal debt.
The governments need to reduce debt. They need to build buffers to address future shocks. They need to meet spending development goals while growth remains muted and shocks more frequent.
President Trump doesn't seem to be very concerned because he says, oh, I'm going to ignite all this growth and therefore debt won't be a problem. Well, the facts are very different.
Well, you can't choose to grow your way out of debt. You have to be following policies which promote growth. It has to be realistic. Debt levels can reach a point where you are not going to grow your way out of them without other methods.
As to what other methods, a government can just not pay. It can push to cut rates and thus what it pays to service debt. It can create new money to buy the debt and push banks or investors to hold the debt. That will cost you, which might explain why measures like these are broadly termed financial repression. Not forgetting any money spent on servicing and thus keeping you in debt is money not spent elsewhere. Every dollar spent on servicing debt, it's a dollar not spent on anything else that might result in greater productivity in their economy in the future.
That's definitely a worry that goes underappreciated by and large. Every time you're borrowing or maintaining debt, you have less amount at your disposal to spend elsewhere. So you can't spend it on social care, you can't spend it on healthcare, defense, education. So the trade-offs become a lot sharper. So the potential for income growth in the economy ultimately gets compromised by very high debt servicing burden. So it becomes a rather adverse spiral that feeds off itself.
So there is a fundamental trade-off in terms of what you are paying for when it comes just to the size of the debt itself. The April 2025 Fiscal Monitor showed that higher interest expenses really can crowd out essential public spending. Specifically, a 1 percentage point of GDP increase in interest costs results in a 0.6 percentage points of GDP permanent decline in non-interest expenses. And the biggest cuts hit social benefits and public investment and subsidies. So this can complicate government's ability to meet rising demands and promote growth through investment.
Public debt, to some extent, is the reflection of societies not being able to decide to live within their means. And means of societies are larger than household means. They can incur debt, and they can incur quite a bit of debt. But at some point, they need to come to an agreement saying, okay, well, we need to keep this under control. There doesn't seem to be that agreement across many societies, starting with the United States, which can't even agree on a year-on-year budget or a debt ceiling or those things that they need to decide on to give some comfort to the markets.
So calls for fiscal restraint have faded and red lines on taxations have hardened. And so it makes it harder than ever to balance the fiscal equation. This trend spans countries, it spans ideologies, which really creates real challenges for the needed fiscal consolidation.
Austerity is used to denigrate any time someone brings up the point that, well, if you spend all your money now, you won't be able to spend as much later. Donald Trump has talked openly about partial default to foreign creditors or other things I would call heterodox measures to try to deal with the debt. When you're talking about government debt problems, it's political. Very few countries have high inflation, default, or take other radical measures simply because they couldn't afford to pay. It's that they're choosing other things. They're choosing more what we call heterodox responses, which can involve high inflation and default.
If you go deeper into the past, they have found the central bank as a source of financing, i.e. printing money. That in turn will, in the end, have inflationary consequences, a very regressive tax on people, and it may wipe out the assets of ordinary people that hold their most of their wealth simply in deposits in banks.
Debt holders also lose from inflation. In the 1970s, I lived through that for sure. Inflation was very high around the world. It was 14% in the US. It reached over 20% in the United Kingdom and Japan. You got murdered if you were holding debt, long-term debt, because, yeah, you're getting repaid, but you're getting repaid with dollars, pounds, yen that buy a lot less than you thought they would.
And so the burden of the debt is passed on to your average citizen, who now can purchase a lot less with the same currency that they have. If we think that's the solution, that's where we get trapped, because debt, one way or the other, will assert itself.
But you could argue that we are at any one time managing the debt quote crisis.
I think that's all we do. In fact, debt is such an integral part of the economy. The question is not whether we should have debt or not have debt. It's how the debt is managed.
So absent sufficient growth, you manage. However, you package this with restraint, consolidation, or austerity. Credit only buys you that much leeway before you have to pay on debt that will assert itself.